Hello. It's been long since I made another video, so I actually had this in mind for a while. I'm finally making a video due to your persistence in asking me what I've modified on my Mojo. So the things that should be of consideration would be the capacitors and the resistors. The resistors are from the power stage, the power amplifier stage, and the FPGM chip. So essentially you've got a few big resistors from the amplifier stage, lots of resistors from the FPGM and other chips, and finally down here you've got one big resistor for the power, essentially DC power part. Well, you can forget about all the resistors below the LEDs, because if I weren't wrong, they aren't that important. Well, at least not to my knowledge. And yet, for the capacitors, I'm going to be honest, except for the filter capacitor for the battery and those two little, I assume they're probably coupling the FPGM to the amplifier stage. Yeah, except for those three capacitors, I am not really sure about these two capacitors. So yeah, you see these two things here. These are the capacitors, the original capacitors, and yeah, there were two little yellow tantalum capacitors for the FPGM to amplifier stage, if I weren't wrong, and of course one more for the filter cap for the battery. So yeah, I swapped them for these Blackgate capacitors. Well, two of these for the FPGM to amp stage, one of these for the battery filter capacitor. Well, of course, this thing was a bit too big to fit down here, so I bought some Amtrans cable, gold Amtrans cable, to just patch it up to the top, because there are a few holes here, if you recall properly, or somewhere here, I forgot. So yeah, and of course the two capacitors somewhere here and here. So yeah, and the mouth resistors, I'll talk about. Yeah, this is one of the most important topics today, the resistors. I'll talk about the capacitors first. Yeah, Chord did modify a few things here and there between generations, but it's mostly just like these capacitors and just bits and bobs. One, like some resistors, less resistors here and there. But yeah, it's nothing major, so you can expect every single Mojo to run through these modifications. So I'll talk about the capacitors first. So yeah, the first modifications would be the capacitors, because they're so accessible. They're literally just here and here, and yeah, there was very low risk of changing them out. So yeah, I was a bit ambitious at the beginning, and I changed the 4 capacitors. After changing those, actually it sounded warmer compared to the unmodified version of itself, and in one sense the sound was more articulate, because, well, it's a Blackgate, and, well, Blackgates do have a problem of long break-in times, so, well, it got better. And yeah, I think the soundstage, of course, well, it got wider, and all the good, well, yeah, Blackgate is very, very well known for bringing in a sense of depth to the music, and it actually happened. You could substitute Blackgate with the latest Kiss, no, it's not, the Kaisei electrolytes from Audio Note. So let's talk about the resistors. Well, as I said before, it's about those resistors. And yeah, look at here. Thick, thin, MOF. So what are these? A thick film resistor, in one sense, yeah, you got to believe in the surface conduction of audio, that theory for this. So in one sense, thick film resistors have quite a rough coating compared to these resistors. Well, we're going to talk about that later. And the laser engraving of the resistor is essentially, well, if it does its job, it does its job. So it's going to be a very uneven pathway for electrons to flow. Well, electrons don't flow, but you can think of it in that sense. So they're going to be very strong heating points. They're going to be like lots of load here and like little load here, and yeah, it's just not an ideal conductor in one sense of audio. But for thin film resistors, relatively speaking, from thick film to thin film, it's got a much smoother coating, and the laser engraving is actually much more precise, as in like the pathway is much more precise compared to thick film. So that's a huge upgrade. But the thing is, if you have a look here, this is the pathway it takes. So there would still be hotspots in these circled areas. So to tackle that, they developed the MELF resistor. So the MELF resistor essentially is, you can think of it in one way as the traditional resistor, but with a twist. So, well, literally with lots of twists. So yeah, this is the traditional resistor, wire wound resistor. So the MELF resistor actually works in the same way, but well, the benefits of the MELF resistor is, since the pathway it takes is much more direct. Actually, it's got no hotspots in one sense, so that the signal actually goes pretty well in a MELF resistor. And well, of course, it's larger than these two, so it could take a hit, as in like if the amplitude goes crazy for a while, it could actually take it in. And yeah, well, if there were a drawback, I'd say the inductance. Yeah, it's probably that word. The inductance of a MELF resistor is higher than these two resistors, but well, I think it's not that much of an issue in this area. So the MELF resistors I bought from RS, I stick to V-Shay when I have the choice, but if I don't, you could always buy RS. And yeah, if you could spend a few more dollars, you could definitely go for high tolerances, well, because why not? But yeah, there are only two resistors that you should be aware of, which are the X85 or 85X, or some resistors essentially going to the chip, because those are 1%, have a margin of error of 1%, so you'd want to use pretty darn accurate resistors for those. So yeah, it took a bit of time to swap out most of them. So it started with the power resistor, a big power resistor down there, and then it got to the amplifier stage, and it finally got to the chips. Yeah, the chips were the most the ones that brought lots of headache. But yeah, essentially what you can expect after changing the resistors is the sound stage and clarity. The sound is going to sound much more refined and defined. Yes, refined and defined. And yeah, the clarity, it does not sacrifice the warmth, the flesh of the sound for clarity, but yeah, indeed, it does bring these properties to your audio game. So that's about it for the benefits and what I've done to the Mojo. But there's one thing I might want to warn you. So yeah, try not to step out of your league. So for my league, I know very clearly that yes, there are way more resistors there and way more film capacitors there that could be changed. But my personal limits, I'd say, is I understand that if they did not list the values of the parts there, I cannot be sure of like what to swap in. So in order to prevent any damage, actually I just swapped the ones with the values, as I said in the beginning. And yeah, well, realistically saying, good film capacitors do have quite a huge size, so it's quite impractical, is it? Let's be honest. And one more thing is, yes, you would need a very good technician for this. I probably haven't told you yet, but I owe the success of this project, I owe it to my university technician. Like yeah, her name is Cassie, and she has been very, very helpful and downright wonderful in helping me in this project. So thank you, Cassie, if you're watching this. Yeah, essentially you will have to do it the right way. Don't rush it. Don't do any you have to find a qualified technician to do this. So yeah, don't cheap out. Don't cheap out on soldering and stuff. And yeah, if I've got a recommendation for solder, 6040. Don't even think about other solders. ROHS solders are rubbish. You need high temperatures for that. You're gonna damage the PC board. And yeah, 6040 with fluxes will pretty much get you anywhere. And yeah, one more thing. There is actually a guy, if I weren't wrong, from the internet who provides wire swapping and soldering for the battery directly to the Mojo. But actually, in my opinion, you could keep it with a what are those called? A connector, because if you think about it, you will eventually have to change your battery. And I assume that your Mojo could, well, it's a very, very versatile product, and it could serve you for many, many years. So if I were you, I would just forget about swapping battery wires. And well, to be honest, it does pose quite a risk, because well, the battery is a lithium battery, and well, lithium batteries like to do funny things. So yeah, try not to fiddle with anything you don't know. Yes, and the last point, please do not fiddle with anything you don't know. If you don't know, ask a technician. If you do know, probably still consult a technician or an engineer. But yeah, that's about it for my advice. So I guess hopefully that helps you in your journey to having a better Mojo. And thank you for watching.